President Trump's war in Iran is continuing to negatively impact the U.S. economy. Today, the average price for a gallon of gas is at nearly $4.45, another record high since the start of the war. And high prices at the pump due to global oil shortages is stoking inflation to climb to its highest in 3 years. Our colleague Maya Eaglin talked to people at a gas station in Maine who are feeling the struggle.
People are not being able to pay rent, get food. People are struggling. People are, ditching meals and all that just to survive. And now this.
I've heard people say they have to choose between putting gas in their car or what they can eat.
You have young families that are choosing to limit the size of their family because they simply can't afford to have more kids.
I like the smell of gas. Meanwhile, the Commerce Department announced this week that the economy grew by 2% during the first quarter of this year, which still fell short of what economists predicted. But that hasn't stopped President Trump and the Republican Party from using the growth figure to paint his economic approach as the right one.
I think we're blowing it away, but we had to make a detour. I'm sorry. We had to make a detour to Iran. Everything will snap back.
Joining us now, Congressman Brendan Boyle, Democrat from Pennsylvania and ranking member on the House Budget Committee. Congressman Boyle, thanks for coming back to the weekend. One, I would love to get your reaction to the president saying that everything will just snap back once his adventure in Iran is over. But before you answer that, let me put this poll up that we've been citing now for the last 2 weeks, Fox News poll, where Democrats top Republicans on the economy. What political party, the Democrats or the Republicans, do you think would do a better job on the economy? Democrats, 52%. This is the first time Democrats have topped Republicans on this question since 2010. Y'all going to use that to your advantage? Can you, by the time we get to the November midterms?
Yeah, well, good to be with you. I was just looking at those gas prices. First, I'm lamenting the fact that I didn't fill up my own tank last week when gas was about $4.15. Now that it's north of $4.40. 2 months ago, the average for a gallon of gas was $2.98 in this country. And now here we are, $4.44 and climbing. Some experts believe it will hit $5 a gallon once we come to peak driving season this midsummer, all because Donald Trump made the rather spur-of-the-moment decision to launch this completely unnecessary war of choice in Iran. The reality is we have a president who really doesn't care about the American people, doesn't care about anyone but himself, and spends most of his time, as reporting has shown now, spends most of his time during the day working on his big, beautiful ballroom rather than focusing on policies that bring down cost for the American people. It is such a tragedy that by just over 1 point, he won my state of Pennsylvania and he won nationwide. We've never before in the White House had someone who cares so little about the average American.
I want to play Congressman President Trump on Friday in the Villages in Florida talking about affordability.
Use the word affordability, but I was the one that received these high prices. It's amazing. I come into office and I say, wow, look at how high these prices are. And the Democrats start screaming, affordability, affordability. They're the ones that caused the problem. I'll tell you one thing. They got one good line of that's one thing I'll say about it.
The word we bleep there is BS. I also want to show this Gallup poll that 55% of respondents say, it was a poll conducted from April 1 to 15, said their financial situation is getting worse. That's up from 53% last year and 47% in 2024. When they hear what the president just said, he's called affordability a hoax. He is now saying that it was handed to him. We are now almost a year and a half into his second term. they're watching him spend apparently $25 billion on a war in Iran that has shot up the gas prices, as you said, talking about this ballroom and other things, putting challenge coins on the doors within the White House, changing the walkway to granite, black granite instead of the white it's been. He typically does a good job of convincing the American people of something that isn't true. And he's done that since he was a real estate agent. Do you think he's going to continue to be able to do that as we move forward? Real estate mogul, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I do give Trump credit, and we all should. He's the single most effective con man in American history, full stop. I mean, this is a guy who has managed to turn the White House into the look of a gaudy Atlantic City casino, and yet somehow has convinced a number of people he has class and grace. It's really hard to fathom, but there's no question about it that he convinced a lot of people he was a successful business person, that he could be the person who would bring down high costs. He convinced enough people in my state of Pennsylvania, as well as nationally, that he won the election a year and a half ago. And he hasn't brought down costs. In fact, he has made the situation much worse. Let's not forget that every single month in 2024, inflation was dropping month after month. We were getting back to 2%. We were so close to hitting it. And then Donald Trump takes office. His so-called Liberation Day takes effect. And did you see? Instead of about a year and a half of a drop in inflation, you immediately saw a spike. Why? Because tariffs are taxes. It is a de facto national sales tax on imported goods, and most of the goods we buy are imported. So since then, we've been paying higher prices, and we are now paying higher prices at the pump, which hits us directly anytime that we gas up, but it also hits us indirectly because we pay it on the cost of goods, because, of course, now shipping costs have gone up as well. So this is a presidency that it's a disaster. But ultimately, Donald Trump isn't running for re-election, so he just doesn't care. So that's why he's spending most of his time on his ballroom, on his golden arch, on etching his name onto the John F. Kennedy Center for Performing Arts, on all of these things that he thinks will give him a legacy, because in the end of the day, he only cares about himself.
Congressman, for the people who are running for re-election or are staying in office, let's say that gas prices, as a lot of Democrats and some economists are predicting, are not transitory, and even if the war ends, continue to stay high for an extended period of time. Are you and other lawmakers discussing legislative fixes to try to rein in the cost? Any sort of policy proposals to either, in the past when there's been crises similar to this, not as bad, there's been a ban on gas exports. Any conversations happening with regards to these prices?
Yeah, well, I'm happy to plug my own bill, which would suspend the gas tax anytime it goes north of $4 a gallon. Our federal gas tax is 18.4 cents a gallon. It was set at that rate in the early 1990s, hasn't changed since then. It is actually the revenue that helps fuel and helps give revenue to the National Highway Trust Fund. I have a proposal that anytime we go north of $4 a gallon, the gas tax would be suspended for every penny we're above $4 a gallon, up to and including 18.4 cents per gallon. And I would backfill that money into the National Highway Trust Fund by suspending the gas company and oil company subsidies that they receive in the so-called Big Beautiful Bill, Trump's huge tax giveaways to basically the wealthy that was passed last summer. So I announced that a few weeks ago at a gas station here in Philadelphia. I do believe that that's a popular and an issue and a bill that makes sense even beyond this current crisis. The idea that we are giving subsidies to these gas companies is absolutely nuts.
Congressman Brendan Boyle, we will be on the lookout for that gas tax bill, and especially if any Republicans join you. Thank you so much for coming to the weekend.
Thank you.